Okay, so let's do a little review about how we want to tackle hatching and cross-hatching. Say I'm going to do a leg bone. Let me just draw the upper reaches of it. I want to try to draw this as realistically as I can, but I might make a few little simplifications in the interest of your time. Let me get a really light basic outline started because I don't want to have dark lines that are going to interfere with my hatching and cross-hatching. I want values and value changes to suggest plane changes, the form, not dark outlines to do all the heavy lifting. Okay, so once I've got the basic bone created here, then I can also lightly map the values, by which I mean I recognize where are things lighter, where are they darker. I notice, for example, that from here to about here, it gets a little darker. If this is a 1, this might be like a 2. It's darker in this lower left as well. Maybe this is also maybe like, it's a 2 here. It gets darker on the side, maybe to like a 3 or 4. This looks to be about a 2 again. Just trying to see like what values are similar, what are different, where do those changes occur. And a good trick is when you're looking at an object and it's hard to distinguish all the values, it's oftentimes because you're so distracted by details, your eyes aren't focusing on just those shifts from gray to light gray to dark gray. So I just slightly cross my eyes, and light then becomes more the focus of your eyes, because your eyes can't focus. They literally cannot focus when they're crossed on detail. Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of mapping out some of those areas to help guide me. Now, when I start hatching, excuse me, I'm going to try to just ink my outline, the thinnest pen I have. I don't want to play around with line variation until I've got my shading and my frequency shading, or hatching, cross-hatching. And now I can start putting in those values. I turn the paper because it's easier for me to pull towards myself. All right, so let's go. And you'll notice the lines are curving. With the form of the object, because otherwise it would flatten the bone and I want it to look three-dimensional. So when I get to this upper, or this sort of sphere at the top, well, now I might even extend these lines, but they're going to curve like lines of latitude and longitude on a globe. I got a couple options here. As I get things darker, I can increase the frequency by putting more hatched lines closer together, or I can introduce perpendicular lines like cross-hatching horizontally, diagonally. I can keep layering it to build them up. Now, I want to avoid going over any spot that gets really bright. There's not a lot of like pure highlights in here. There are some lighter areas right along here in this strip. And right along here. So maybe I actually avoid that spot for now. I can always go back to it and add the lines if I need to. I can always extend these. You don't need perfect, unbroken lines. Hatching and cross-hatching, shading in general isn't about perfection. It's about really just honing your eyes to recognize value changes, trying to capture them. Because the more you capture, the more realistic, the more three-dimensional something looks. The fewer values it has, the flatter it's going to look, because our understanding of the world around us, the visual world around us, is so dependent on value. We almost take it for granted. But when we don't duplicate all that value variation in our drawings, then they're left looking flat because they're not left looking like the way we see the world. So now I'm going to introduce some cross-hatching to darken things. It does get a little darker to the bottom right here. So you bend those with the form. Gets a little darker under here too. And then if I recognize things getting darker anywhere else, even darker than these sort of middling values I already have, well, I'll revisit them and I'll push the values further still with more line frequency. So even though I have cross-hatched, well, I can always cross-hatch again, but at yet another different angle to push the darkness further still. So heading this way, I can work diagonally. Want really just fluid, swift motion there. Because that'll ensure cleaner, crisper lines. Okay. And then I look for missed opportunities. Well, this isn't all so very bright like that. It does get a little darker here. Must be a depression there. Let's get a little darker here. I want to try to get any peaks and valleys I see. Plane changes. Some pock marks. Random little striations I'm seeing in there. Because it's clearly a textured surface. Doesn't look too perfectly smooth. Little pockets of even darker areas. And while I might not get perfection, I want to strive to try to create as clean hatching, cross-hatching as possible. What do I want to avoid is this kind of hatching, cross-hatching that gets a little haphazard and lines just sort of like double up on top of each other. Of course, overlapping lines can help to add dimension, but a consistency will make it look clean, and also the value change is that much more understandable. It'll translate more clearly as a shift from, say, a value 2 to a 3 or a 4, as opposed to an accidental mess where it doesn't so much look like value as it does a mistake and overeager, faster shading than we probably should have applied. Okay? So this can take a little time to build up and a little practice to get used to. Do your best to try to suggest as much value as possible with line frequency. The more you have, the more dimension you lend it. And if you don't feel totally confident, practice will help you get there. So it might behoove you to just do a couple studies of skulls, leg bones, anything else that might fit your fancy too, be it like food studies or simple objects. But since we are headed towards skeletal studies using hatching, cross-hatching, it probably will help to get a couple more bits of bones and anatomy under your belt as well. Okay? Thanks for watching.